Tired of restless nights? At Leesa, we know good sleep is essential for mental, physical, and emotional health. From memory foam mattresses to hybrids that keep you cool all night long, Leesa's mattresses offer exceptional comfort and support with free delivery and 100 nights to try out your mattress in the comfort of your home. For a limited time, save up to $700 off select mattresses plus 2 free pillows. Go to leesa.com/iHeart for an additional $50 off mattresses and select goods. Exclusions apply. See leesa.com for more details.
CareerBuilder is made for people who have that thing. You know, those superpowers that make you good at your job, the skills you bring to work. And CareerBuilder knows those skills make you right for other jobs too. Higher paying jobs with benefits, jobs you never thought of trying. Are you a people person? Work from home as a customer service rep. Are you organized and like driving? Become a delivery driver. You have the skills it takes, and CareerBuilder.com has the jobs to get you hired fast. Visit CareerBuilder.com.
It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Welcome to Wednesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. We are here on Giants.com every weekday, live from 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time for 1 hour to talk Giants football as well as some other NFL stuff, should you choose. Our number is 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. And as always, if you missed the show live, you can catch an archive of this show on your favorite podcast platforms everywhere, the Giants mobile app, and at Giants.com/podcasts. I'm Paul Dottino. He's Matt Seatak. Schmelk has got me all screwed up with this guy's name, but we're going to get it. It's like Thiesman and Theismann, right? And Dorsett and Dorset. We just got to put the right emphasis on the right vowel. So Seatak is with me. I'm Dottino. He's at Matt Seatak, and I'm at Giants WFAN if you choose to hit us up on Twitter. First up, we're going to be talking about what Joe Schoen, the Giants general manager, said yesterday at the Senior Bowl practices, which are continuing today. John Schmelk is down there. We expect to hear from him at some point today. I've already watched the morning practices involving the national team and saw some really cool things. Shea Tierney, the Giants quarterbacks coach, is the offensive coordinator of the national team, and so I was very interested to see some of what they were doing. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Again, our number is 201-939-4513. If you want to give us a call, we'll be very glad to talk to you. Matt, Joe Schoen yesterday, though, in addressing a number of things, and let's take them one at a time because there were three particular items that all the writers had talked about in today's editions of their newspapers. Number one, the Giants are picking at 6. They have a host of needs, and the board is wide open. It could be a quarterback. It may not be a quarterback, and it could certainly be a host of any other positions. Joe was not going to be committal in any way, which is exactly how he should handle this.
Of course. I mean, the draft is a little under 3 months away. You know, we still have the combine. We still have prospect interviews, pro days. There's still so many things to come that could change prospects' draft stock, help them rise, help them fall. I mean, as I was talking to John a couple of weeks ago on BBK, there are guys right now that are not projected to go in the first half of the first round at this moment who will end up going in the top 8, top 10 picks once the draft comes along. So no GM across the NFL should be setting their draft board and, locking it in or locking in a set position at their draft pick when there's still, almost 3 months to go before the draft.
Now, of some interest, the Giants do have a number of coaches involved in both the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl, which does give them a little bit of a leg up on finding out about these players before they get to the Combine at the end of February. Now, in particular, Mike Kafka is a head coach in the Shrine Game, or the Shrine Bowl as it's now called. It used to be called the Shrine Classic and the Shrine Game. It's now called the Shrine Bowl. He's a head coach there, and Shea Tierney is the offensive coordinator of the national team in the Senior Bowl. Those are the two most important of the Giants coaches who are at these All-Star games.
Yes, definitely. I mean, we should also mention, Angela Baker is at the Shrine Bowl as a tight ends coach, while I believe Mike Adams is one of the special teams coordinators at the Senior Bowl, and Michael Gobriel, the new special teams coordinator, is also is he at the Shrine Bowl? He's the special teams coordinator
He's
at
one of the Senior Bowl, I thought.
The Senior Bowl. Okay. So then we have both special team coordinators of the Senior Bowl.
Now, the thing about it is, you get more hands-on with these guys, and we've talked about that on some of these other shows in the past. Now, for me, the head coach, having Kafka as a head coach and having Tierney as an offensive coordinator, I think those carry a little more weight than the other spots, with all due respect to the other Giants coaches.
Definitely.
And like today, and we'll talk about this later, but Tierney was mic'd up during ESPN News coverage of the Senior Bowl practice today. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to him in terms of calling plays and in terms of coaching up the quarterbacks. Now, I will tell you this, for those of you who want the Giants to take a quarterback, most people believe that the top 3 quarterbacks will be gone by the time the Giants get to number 6. You following me, Matt?
Yes.
Okay. I happen to have a favorite quarterback in this class, and it's Bo Nix out of Oregon. Many people think he should be number 4 on the list. I'm not so sure that he should be number 4, but I'll give the majority their due. I just say he is clearly, in my opinion, the top quarterback in the second rung of quarterbacks, according to most people.
Yeah, I mean, that tier of quarterbacks that you're talking about, they have a few, talented quarterbacks. The top 3 are the top 3, and as you said, a lot of people are projecting them to be picks 1, 2, and 3 in this year's draft. However, there's Bo Nix, there's J.J. McCarthy from Michigan, there's Michael Penix from Washington. I feel like those 3 tend to be the next 3 up in most people's rankings.
And I don't think it's close. Bo Nix is so far above those other 2 on my grading chart. They're like on a different hemisphere.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm a big Bo Nix guy, and he had a hell of a practice today. And the fact that Coach Tierney has him at the Senior Bowl, I think the Giants are going to know an awful lot about Bo Nix if they decide at some point whether or not they move down, because I don't think he's going to be the number 6 pick in this draft. I think he'll be lower than that. And if the Giants decide that they're willing to move down some spots, if they're going to take a quarterback, I could see him being a really good fit, because he's also, with all the experience that he has at Oregon, he can be a developmental guy. You don't need to just rush him in right away. All right, he's mature. He understands what's going on. He's my guy. But having said that, okay, it's important to note that the Giants could easily flip that number 6 from multiple picks when you consider how many spots Joe Shane said they need to try to fill in this draft. He went through a litany of positions. And, I mean, if they make a deal to move down to get 2 or 3 extra picks, I don't think anybody should cry about that at all.
No, I mean, I agree. I think the Giants are in an interesting situation this year where at the number 6 pick, as we said, with the 3 quarterbacks supposedly going 1, 2, and 3, this is a year where it wouldn't surprise us if the Giants ended up trading up. It wouldn't surprise us if the Giants ended up trading down.
Shock me if they trade up. I'd be shocked.
Would?
I'd be shocked if they trade up.
I wouldn't be totally shocked, honestly. But regardless, they could stand pat at 6. They could move up. They could move back. All options are clearly on the table. Now, if the Giants and Joe Shane decide to go after one of these quarterbacks in the next year, you're right in that they probably would not have to use the number 6 pick. Again, a lot can change between now and the start of the draft and on April 25th. But as of right now, it doesn't seem like any of those next tier of quarterbacks should go at number 6, in which case, you're right. Then Joe could decide, move back a couple picks, stockpile, add some, maybe day 2, day 3 picks in order to help fill out all of the other roster needs.
All right.
I will just say one quarterback from that tier that we've been talking about that I am most interested in sort of just seeing how he does this week is Michael Penix. Just watching him what he did at Washington this season and his just ability to throw a beautiful
He's got a cannon.
deep pass.
Cannon of an arm.
The way his accuracy on deep passes thoroughly impressed me. Now, it helped when you had Rome Odunze, one of the top wideouts in the country, on the receiving end, along with Jalen Polk and just a good group of pass catchers. But nonetheless, Michael Penix is just the guy I'm interested to see over the next 2.5 months leading up to the draft.
There are some people who think his injury history will drop him out of the first round.
It's true. It's good. He had two
Just saying.
two torn ACLs,
Two ACLs and two
shoulder injuries.
Four seasons ruined by injury.
Yeah,
That's going to scare a lot of people away.
certainly could. But what he did this past season, very impressive.
In that event, Penix, as well as Nix and Hartman, are the 3 quarterbacks on the national squad at the Senior Bowl. We bring in John Schmelk, who's at the Senior Bowl. John was in the stadium watching practice as I was watching it on TV today. John, Hartman did not do himself any favors at all, at least in the 11-on-11s. He had a rough morning.
I'll be honest, I don't think any of the quarterbacks have done themselves favors the first 2 days. And I didn't even write anything about the quarterbacks in my practice report yesterday because I've learned being down here a bunch, it sometimes takes a day or two of practice for these quarterbacks to gain confidence in the offenses and also to learn their receivers and how to throw to them and time everything out. And I remember when Daniel Jones was here 4 or 5 years ago. He was flat out awful the first 2 days of practice. He couldn't hit anybody. He's literally, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and like, you're on the sideline during warm-ups of practice where you're throwing in the individual portion of practice where no defense is even there, and they're talking to somebody on the sideline, and like a ball hits one of them in the leg, like 10 yards out of bounds, and like, what was that? They look up. And it was Daniel Jones air-mailing flat passes.
Oh, my.
And then, like, it happened again a couple minutes later on the next time. So I always liked – and then he got better as the week went along, right? So I like to try to give these quarterbacks a couple of days here before I start rendering judgment. But to me, I don't think any of the 7 quarterbacks that are down here have really stood out, to be totally honest with you. We haven't seen a bunch of, big-time passes completed down the field. It's been a lot of checkdowns in the team and 7-on-7 portions. So for me, at least, I haven't gotten a ton from the quarterback position, at least so far out here in Mobile.
Hey, John. So I've been following along on Twitter as, Jim Nagy, the Senior Bowl, all these different accounts are posting clips and, articles about the first day of practice. And I just wanted to ask you, because I've seen that there were a few wide receivers yesterday that really seemed to stand out from the bunch. Roman Wilson from Michigan being one.
That checks out.
Ladd McConkey from Georgia being another. So I just wanted to ask what you've seen from some of the one-on-one wide receiver versus cornerback matchups on the first day and a half.
Yeah, Wilson and McConkey have by far been the 2 best route runners here, and they've been able to consistently create separation at the top of their routes. No one's been able to cover Roman Wilson. He gets open deep, he gets open short, he gets open into intermediate areas. He had a great catch at the end of the first practice today where, Paul, remember Joe Judge used to do this, and Matt, you were there for this obviously as well, where you would do a couple one-on-ones in front of the entire team at the end of practice, and then whichever group lost, that side would have to do push-ups, right? So they basically would take one-on-one from each position group, and Roman Wilson got the nod for the offense for the national team today. And again, they usually try to pick the guys that have practiced the best, so not a surprise that he was the guy that got selected. And he went against who's been the best cornerback on both rosters here. That's Quinton Mitchell out of Toledo. He had an interception in today's practice as well. He's been fantastic. He's going to be a first-round pick. And he basically made him stumble at the top of the route. Then he went to the sideline. I think it was Michael Penix at quarterback. He throws an errant pass. He used to reach back behind him over his head. He reaches up, grabs it with one hand, gets 2 feet in as he falls out of bounds. So Wilson has been phenomenal. I think Jim Nagy made a Tyler Lockett comp for him the other day, which I actually think is pretty good. He's 5'10", 186, so he's not the biggest guy, but he knows how to play wide receiver. And then Ladd McConkey, he has not practiced yet today. That's the practice we're waiting to get started here down in Mobile. but he turned one poor cornerback around on a route the other day where he has him in the middle of the field. He fakes outside, then comes back inside, and the poor cornerback's twisted himself into a pretzel, and he got about literally 10 yards of separation. I don't know what he's going to run in the 40, McConkey. He might only be a high 4.4s guy, but he runs routes. He's very quick, and he's got great hands. So I think both those guys have probably been the two best wide receivers here. One of the guys most worth mentioning at that spot, Matt, today, I would say is probably Devontae Walker out of North Carolina. He's 6'1.5", 197 pounds, and he has gotten himself open a lot. Whether it's over the top, on slants, he's good at the top of the route, he's good at the line of scrimmage. The problem is that he's dropped a couple passes. So he's shown the ability to separate, which for me is the more important skill. I watched a lot of his tape. I don't remember seeing a ton of drops, to be honest with you. I watched every snap that Drake May took this year, and I don't remember a lot of Devontae Walker's drops on that tape. But he is getting open, but he has dropped a couple passes. So that's one thing he's going to have to clean up. But he has been impressive as well.
John, I'm at a disadvantage having to watch this stuff on TV.
It's impossible.
I've got ESPNU on the left of my screen. I've got NFL Plus on the right of my screen. And I'm watching the live practice on both. And by the way, ESPNU is 15 seconds ahead of NFL Plus. You can imagine how dizzy I was getting watching this. Now, what I did watch was the first hour of the national practice, okay?
Yeah.
And when they're doing the one-on-ones, and this is where you really need to flesh out for us, because they're doing the D-line, O-line on one side and the wide receivers and the corners on the other side. And it's just between them and their director flipping and flopping cameras and trying to watch both screens. It's very hard to pick up. I saw two things, though, that I want you to help me with. Sure. Latu from UCLA appeared to have a good day in the pass rush drills from what I was able to glean. And Smith Wade had a hell of an interception down near the goal line, the corner out of Washington State. Those seem to be the two highlights that I saw in the one-on-ones. Help me out with some more info if you can.
No, I appreciate that, Paul. And you're right. It is tough here, too, because those are going on at exactly the same time, right? So I'm kind of perched up in the back row of the first level of bleachers at the 50-yard line. So I'm trying to keep my eyes on one thing and also kind of watch the other, but I'm using my binoculars to watch the O-line, D-line one-on-ones, and I'm kind of peering over at the wide receiver one. So I didn't see everything. So the stuff I definitely didn't see, I'm going to go back, I'm going to rewatch the practice tape tonight and see what I missed. But, yes, I thought yesterday Latu, who obviously is probably going to be the highest pass rusher selected that's in this game. The only one that's probably going to go ahead of him is maybe Dallas Turner, maybe Jared Verse when we get to draft night in April. He's going to be a top 20 pick, maybe top 15. Yesterday he was good, but he wasn't dominant. Today he was rarely blocked. And that was in the one-on-ones and even in the team drills. He was very, very effective. He's got a full bag of tricks. He's got really good technique. He has a full repertoire of pass rush moves. He was very, very good, as he was every week, and as he was during the season, I should say. And you're right. That was a really nice interception. There was Melton, the Rutgers corner, had a strip on the sideline during team drills. So that was a nice play out of him. Who else today made a couple of plays? Offensive line-wise, Jackson Powers-Johnson, the interior lineman out of Oregon. He's not going to be the highest drafted offensive lineman here because he's not a tackle, but I think he is the best offensive lineman here in terms of the frequency in which he wins his reps. He's been fantastic at both guard and center, and at 6'3", 334. He is the whole bag. He's good. Talise Fuaga, the right tackle out of Oregon State, he's been very good. He's been one of the more consistent offensive linemen out there. Kingsley Suamatai out of BYU. He's been a little up and down, but when he has a good rep, it's downright dominant. That's from the national team. And then since I was on before the American practice yesterday, I should give you a couple guys from there. Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma, I thought did a really nice job in practice yesterday. His hands get outside sometimes a little bit too much, but you can tell he's got a nasty streak to him. He has 34.25-inch arms, and he can move. So when you check all those boxes, teams are going to look pretty favorably on you when you're able to play. And then a couple guys on defense that I think you guys will like. Braden Fisk out of Florida State. He's a transfer. He was only at Florida State for 1 year. He's one of these undersized three techniques. He's 6'3", 295. 6'3.5", 295. He is able to get upfield. He is lightning quick. He's got violent hands. He's able to penetrate. He's been a huge pain for these offensive linemen to block, which I think for the most part have gotten the best of some of these defensive linemen. I think these offensive line groups have been good. And then one other guy, Paul, for you, Adisa Isaac from Penn State.
Yes, I want to ask you about him.
He had three team reps today in the team portion. He beat Fuaga 3 out of 4 reps going around his outside. So I think he's been pretty good too.
I wanted to ask you about him, and obviously you just did, so that's good, and I'm glad that proved out to be true. Also, Michael Hall, defensive tackle from Ohio State, looked like he was getting into the pocket.
Yeah, and, Michael Hall's an interesting guy, Paul. I watched his tape in the offseason because he was supposed to be a first-round pick this year. He's younger. I believe he's only a junior. And his tape from last year, it was a little inconsistent, and I think he had an injury, too, that cut his season short. But you saw all the tools, right? Or maybe that was 2 years ago he got hurt. Either way, you saw all the tools, and then this year he just really wasn't that productive at Ohio State. He did not have a great year. But you're right. He has been very tough to block. He's one of those undersized guys, too. He weighed in at just 280 pounds, all right? And he's a defensive tackle. He's not a defensive end. Yeah. So that's going to be a guy.
He's a technique guy.
You go back to like Kalijah Cansey last year, right? It's going to be someone like that where it's going to have to be a specific scheme where you know how to use them. But, yeah, in terms of like raw defensive tackle athleticism, he's been very, very good.
One of the other guys I wanted to ask about, John, I know you mentioned Dallas Turner, and he is definitely the Alabama edge rusher that gets the most attention, but his teammate is down in Mobile this week, and at least according to Lance Zierlein of NFL.com, Chris Braswell, the edge rusher from Alabama, was one of the standouts from yesterday's practice, at least according to Zierlein. What did you see from Braswell during yesterday's practice?
Yeah, Lance has a good eye. He's 6'3", 257 with about 33-inch arms, so he's got good size. And, when I watched him on tape this year, I saw him as more of a guy that was kind of an athlete off the edge. He'd get around the corner and use his athleticism. I've been actually pretty impressed with his power rush. He's gotten his hands inside on a couple of these offensive tackles that obviously outweigh him by 50, 60 pounds. And he's been able to push him back into the backfield. So much like Latu, I'm looking forward to him in the second practice today to kind of open up a little bit. I'm curious. I'm very anxious to watch him in one-on-ones. But, yes, I agree. I think in terms of pure edge guys, after Latu, he's probably been the second or third best edge guy. The other edge guy that's been good, though, I didn't notice him in the early practice today. I'll have to go back and rewatch his reps. Marshawn Nealand out of Western Michigan, he's 6'3", 268 with 34-inch arms, and he actually on their Zebra player tracking systems, he had the fastest defensive line speed on the field in day one of practice as well, and he was almost about like 1.5 miles per hour on that tracking system. So he's another one of the edge guys have been good. But yeah, Braswell, he's going to try to fight himself into the back end of that first round. He's very good. He's athletic, and I'm looking forward to watching him here in practice number 2. Go up against guys like Tyler Guyton, guys like Patrick Paul, and some of the other pretty darn good offensive linemen that are here.
John, before we let you go, what time did Joe Shane talk yesterday? Did you have a chance to discuss that on the program?
He did talk early yesterday at 8:30, but I did not have a chance to discuss it on the program. But I'm happy to do it with you now. If you like. I got plenty of time. Practice hasn't even started yet, so I got plenty of time, guys.
Well, our lines are full, but give me a quick takeaway or two.
What I took away from what Joe Shane said, look, I think options are open. I don't think the Giants are married to anything. I think they're going to feel out this process in terms of draft and free agency. They're going to set, and look, we talked about this before, Joe Shane, right? He's going to set price points where he says, look, I think in free agency, these guys are worth X, and, that's how we're going to attack this, and they'll work through it. There's guys they want back, and they will try to make it work from a deal perspective. And then in the draft, look, there's a lot of needs. And I think you look at that pick at number 6, I think you can find an elite player there if you stick. I heard you guys talking before I came on. I would not be surprised by a trade back. I would not be surprised by a trade up. The problem is that I don't think any teams in front of the Giants are going to be looking to trade back.
How true.
At least in picks 1 through 5. Right now, could I see move up with your 2 second-round picks into the back end of the first round if you want to target somebody? Okay, I don't know if that would necessarily blow me away if they have somebody that they think is an elite player at a position of need that they need. That would not blow me away at all. But, look, I think in terms of what positions they're targeting, I think they're leaving things wide open. So I think it's great for us and our content, right? We could talk about all these different position groups because the Giants have a lot of these in different spots, and I don't think Joe Schoen is ruling anything out at this early time.
John, in particular, I want to know if this was taken out of context in some of the stories that were written today. Did he give a schedule on Daniel Jones's knee rehab, or did he not? The writers were saying that Joe said there was a chance, or a good chance, he's going to be on schedule for the start of training camp. Did I read that incorrectly, or is that out of context?
I do not remember hearing a specific time, but I can go back and listen to it. But I don't recall him giving a specific timeline on the injury.
Yeah, nobody had it in quotes, but they had written it as regular prose, as if he was expected to be ready for camp and would be the starter. And I was like, I'd like to see a quote on that. I don't know that Joe's ever locked himself into a schedule.
Well, I mean, Joe Schoen has said if he's healthy, he's going to be the starter week one, right? Like, he has said that.
Yes.
And I think we know just by timelines that I think beginning of training camp is a possibility. But, no, I don't think unless I'm like, again, maybe I missed something, but I don't remember him giving a specific date and, blocking, what, a month and change off the surgery?
It would be early. It would be very early.
I think it'd be really early to put a specific time.
I just wish there was video or audio available from the conference instead of having to just read the text from the writers. But anyway, it is what it is.
Okay, well, maybe I will see about getting the on-the-record stuff to you, Paul.
Thank you, John.
I'll try to send that to you.
Appreciate it, man. Enjoy the rest of the week. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, guys, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'll be back with you.
Take care, John.
John Schmelk down at the Senior Bowl practices this week in Mobile, Alabama. I appreciate the fact that his perspective from the stadium, he can see everything all at once. Again, it was very hard for me to be watching two split screens. I still think that Nick's had a really good 11-on-11 session today. And Shea Tierney seemed to be very pleased with him when he was mic'd up during that session. Penix was probably the second best, and then Hartman just had, I had missing an open receiver, squeezing a pass into the middle that he shouldn't have thrown. He had another ball that was tipped. He was short on a left go route. It was a rough day. But let me make something clear to you, Matt. The circumference of an NFL ball is a half an inch, the radius, I should say, is a half an inch larger than an NCAA ball. And for many of these players who are going to these college all-star games, this is the first time they've ever picked up an NFL ball or thrown an NFL ball. That can be an adjustment in itself.
Oh, 100%.
So, like when John says to you the first day or two of Senior Bowl practices, like even last year, he wasn't as impressed as things appeared later on in the week. I can understand where that could happen because there was at one point, Shea Tierney was talking to I think it was Michael Penix and one of the receivers, and they were trying to do a route, and Shea was explaining the route as well as he could. He's like, "Oh, do you know what this is? Blah 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 blah," and the player's like, "I think so." All right, well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go 15 yards down, 15 to 18 yards, then you're going to make the in cut. You're going to turn. Oh, okay, Coach, we got it. It's kind of fun. That's why I enjoy ESPNU, because they got the coaches mic'd up, and I enjoyed listening to that. But it also goes to show you what they're dealing with. This is not a perfect situation for any of these prospects right now.
No, definitely not. I mean, as John mentioned, especially when it comes to team 11-on-11 drills, wide receiver versus cornerback drills. These are quarterbacks working with wide receivers that they've never thrown the ball to.
Exactly.
I mean, we see it at the beginning of Giants training camp each year. It takes a couple of days of practice even, despite having an offseason where, the last couple of offseasons, Daniel Jones has gotten together with the Giants pass catchers. Mm-hmm. They've had OTAs. They've had minicamp. But still, you get to the beginning of training camp, and the offense typically has a little bit of a slow start. You see quarterbacks trying to figure out the wide receivers figure out where the quarterback likes to throw the ball. Like, it's a process. And these are guys from schools all over the country that have, for the most part, never played together, trying to figure each other out. in a matter of a couple of days with NFL talent evaluators all over watching every single step they make on the practice field.
Now, it sounds really silly when I say this, but it happens to be true because if you've talked to receivers, they will tell you that it can be an adjustment. In college, the NCAA ball has two white, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like ribbons, one around each side of the belly of the football. Okay, there's a white stripe. It's a stripe, not a ribbon. It's a white stripe around the belly of the football that's towards the ends. The reason that's there is to make the ball easier to see for the receivers. So when the ball's coming in and spinning, they can see the white stripes as they're spinning, and it tells them where the tip of the ball is and where the back end of the ball is. In the National Football League, they don't have that. Okay? The ball doesn't have the white stripe. I've talked to receivers who have told me that when they first try to start catching an NFL ball, it's a visual adjustment for them because they're looking for the white stripe and they don't see the white stripe. And part of that is for depth perception as the ball's coming in. So this is something else that you should keep in mind when you're watching some of these drills and some of these, even at the combine. These are some things that, maybe it's a bigger problem for some guys than it is others. I bet you didn't know that.
I did not. But, as we know, adjusting from college to the NFL at any position is quite difficult. Rookies will tell that all the time. There's the learning curve to prepare yourself and get ready to, NFL speed, the physicality, and just everything about it. So these Senior Bowl practices for a lot of these guys, other than, possibly some private training, this is the first time that they're going through sort of like an NFL practice.
Well, it's nerve-wracking for sure.
For the very first time. So it is a huge adjustment. And obviously all of these guys will get better as the pre-draft process goes on. And then once they get into their respective training camps over the summer and get into the preseason. But this is the very first taste they're getting of even a little bit of the NFL. So big adjustment.
All right, we got a half hour left in the show. We're going to take rapid-fire calls from you. Remember, the Giants Huddle podcast is available up on Giants.com and all your favorite podcast platforms. You get interviews with coaches, former players, NFL dignitaries. It's all there. Don't forget to leave a positive 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you can. It lets everybody know that you like the show. Subscribe. There's all kinds of stuff on there. A ton of stuff from John from the Shrine Bowl and from the Senior Bowl. So check it out. Also, Giants season memberships are available coming up for the 2024 season. Again, no reason to just leave your Giants fandom at the door during the offseason. You can still get involved, and season subscriptions are available. All you've got to do is go to Giants.com/tickets, and there is limited inventory available for 2024, so check that out when you get a chance. And also, Giants TV is the official TV streaming app. It brings you all kinds of original content. Giants TV is on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and the Giants mobile app. And then, of course, don't forget Draft Season with Tony, Pauline, and John, which also comes your way through all of our internet platforms. All right, let's go to the phones. 201-939-4513. We have taken enough of your time. We want to get to you guys. Jason from New Haven, you are first on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Hey, fellas, how you doing?
Hi.
Good. How are you, Jason?
Good. Thanks, man. Thanks for taking my call. Hey, Paul, I was listening to the show a few days ago, and I want to agree with you. I know it's not Giants related, but that Lions and the Ravens, the Ravens and the Lions, man, what a disappointment those two quarterback. Well, the Ravens had a quarterback issue in my opinion, and then the Lions had a coaching issue.
Yeah.
So those guys just choked the game away. It was just crazy to watch. So I agree with you on that. I just wanted to agree with you on that point.
Well, I appreciate that. It's a shame it worked out that way, though, isn't it? But I'll tell you what. I think we'll see two well-played sides of the ball in the Super Bowl. I do think we will see that.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so a few points. So I know you guys are callers. Just a few points I wanted to make. Another, Paul, I want to agree with you on this. I don't think enough people are talking about Bo Nix. I know there's some people that say he might, they like him in the second round. Some people say in the first. I always say this: if you, as an organization, believe this guy is the guy and you can mold him to what you want him to be, then you take him. I wouldn't want to get into this, well, we're not going to take him and wait to the second. Either you like him or you really love him or you don't like him. So that's just my opinion on Knicks. 2 other points, if I may.
Absolutely. I would add this to you. Remember, there's always that thought that if you can grab a guy late in the first round, you get that 5th-year option on his contract, which becomes incredibly valuable, specifically when you're looking at the highly priced quarterback position. So I would be shocked if Bo Nix gets into the second round. If you want him,
I don't see it either.
You may have to get him, later on in the first.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I don't see him last to the second. There's too many QB needy teams in the league, and I think he's shown enough talent and arm talent and escapability to be a first round pick. Now, whether that be top 10 or middle, we'll see what happens with that.
A lot of experience and a lot of polish. He might be the most pro-ready quarterback coming out. He may not have the highest ceiling, but he might be the most pro-ready.
Right, and I think he could sit a year. I mean, I don't know if he'd unseat Daniel, like if Daniel's healthy. I don't know if he'll unseat him for that job, but Daniel's a pretty smart quarterback. He can learn a lot from Daniel. So, and, I'll move on from the quarterback position. 2 things I wanted to talk about. The lines, I'm a big believer in the trenches, and maybe, Paul, you agree with me, too. D-line, O-line, I think.
Are you sure we're not related?
I don't think it's not – I'm not saying anything scientific or out of the ordinary. There's some guys and in the free agency. I'm just going to list them. I'm not saying we have the money to pick them up, but I would like to see. Offensive line, I know I called a few weeks ago. I don't know if they're going to move off of Neal. I know he's still a young player. He's still learning. But I said a few weeks ago, he needs some competition. I don't think the job should just be handed to him anymore. I think that's kind of out the window. And Wanu from the Patriots is a name I always bring up. Trent Brown is another guy. Maybe one of the guards. You got Hunt and Dolphins. You got Dotson with the Rams. So I actually like this free agent crop. Where our money will be, who knows? Secondly, the defensive edge line. I like Tibbs. I like Kayvon. I think he had a really good year. I'm still a big believer in him. He has talent. He's getting better. But I think he needs I don't want to say a Batman or Robin. I'll just say he needs some help. And there is some very good pass rusher options maybe this year. Whether they be tagged or not, who knows? You got Burns. You got the gentleman from Minnesota who has ties to Andre Patterson. I forgot his name. Number 99.
You mean Daniel Hunter?
And you have Daniel Hunter, and then you have the young man from Jacksonville. So there's some talent. Now, I know Hunter's a little bit on the back 9 of his career, but I still think he had double-digit sacks this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, one of the reasons you might want to go for an older guy is you may be able to get him cheaper on a shorter-term deal. Yeah, economically, that may make sense.
Absolutely. And then the last point, I'll take it off the air. This 4-player, if we decide to stay at 6, I'm not a big proponent of trading up. I don't think we have enough talent on our roster to make that trade. We still need some depth along some pieces, along some positions. So I don't see us trading. I'd be shocked if we traded up. I can see us trading down, but, we'll see. But there's 4 players I like to bring up. Neighbors from LSU. We've long talked about a alpha number 1 receiver. I think he would fit that bill.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Joe Alt from Notre Dame, and I know people say, another first-round pick for a line. I'll say this. We need our line to be, like you would say, Paul, to be functional. So I don't care what resource they use, whether it be free agency, whether it be draft. If he is a player that can help on that line, I think you at least talk about or consider it. So I like Joe Alt. I like the defensive end from UCLA, Latu. He is really polished. I know he's had some medical concerns, but I think he could really flourish with us and Tibbs and Dexter in that middle. I think he could have a pretty big impact. And then Knicks, I don't foresee the 3 top quarterbacks staying till 6. I could be wrong, but I don't think Knicks would be bad if Joe Shane, of course, would have to talk to Dable and say, hey, what would you do with this clay of mold if we're interested in him? If he fits all our characteristics, leadership qualities, on the field, do you think Dable or Kafka or whoever, you can mold him into a quarterback? We could go into every game and say, you know what, we got a shot. Maybe not Mahomes or Josh Allen, but we have a shot to win this game every week, regardless of other factors. And those are my 4 players, and I want to thank you guys for the call.
Jason, thank you so much. 2 things for you, Pat, before we get to our next call.
Yep.
Number 1, we all know the Giants need to help their offensive line. Do you favor doing this in the draft where tackle seems to be deeper than guard, or do you really favor to spend the money in free agency and try to make somewhat of a splash there?
So I think you got to, well, obviously free agency comes first. So Joe Shane, the front office, will get a sense of what some of these top offensive linemen, whether it's tackles or interior linemen in free agency, what the market is, or how much they're going to cost. Because the Giants have some cap space, but it's not like they have unlimited cap space to work with this offseason. Personally, with 3 picks in the top 50 and how deep this draft has been, all the draft analysts have said when it comes to the offensive line.
Tackle in particular, though.
Tackle in particular. And for tackle, I feel like it's a lot more leaning towards the first round, where there are a lot of, I think it was over at least 10 offensive tackles that one of the top draft analysts projected in his latest mock draft to go in the first round.
Because offensive line in the last several years, because of the way the college game is, there's been a dearth of them. This just happened to be a year where I think because of the COVID year and the way that guys, either played or didn't play and opted out, I think it just kind of combined a couple of tackle classes and O-line classes that the mathematics just worked out. This is an aberration.
Yeah, and as Joe Shane mentioned, I believe it was his end of season press conference, this is, I feel like, the last year that we're going to feel the effects of all the COVID exceptions when it comes to the NFL draft.
Super seniors, as they say.
Yeah, moving on, the 2025 NFL draft, I feel will be more of what we're used to seeing. But yeah, in terms of addressing some of the needs, whether it's free agency or draft, I mean, as we've mentioned for weeks now, 2 of the biggest needs for the Giants this offseason are going to be on the offensive line and at wide receiver. Those happen to be the 2 probably strongest and deepest positions in this year's draft. And those 2 positions also cost a lot when you're talking about signing a top guy in free agency. Those are premier positions.
Do.
Take out quarterback. Those are probably the next 2 highest, maybe.
And pass rusher.
And edge rusher, exactly.
Yeah.
So I personally am a proponent of between the number 6 pick, the number 39 pick, and 47. I believe those are our 3 picks. To address those 2 positions with 2 of those 3 picks, I think, if they decide to potentially go, as Jason mentioned, with, a Joe Alt or Fashanu or one of these other top tackles at number 6, when it comes to the second round pick, there are going to be some very, very talented wide receivers that are going to be there still on the board. Guys that can fit into this, number 1 receiver mold. One of the top free agent wide receivers this offseason is T. Higgins. He was the first pick in the second round of the 2019 draft, whatever draft it was.
But I also don't want to put a ceiling on Jalen Hyatt. I don't know if he can be a 1 or a 1A or a 2. I don't want to put a ceiling on him yet because he's so young. But he was a 3rd-round pick.
Of course.
And I think people are pretty excited about him.
Hyatt showed flashes this past season of just how dangerous he can be for an offense. I mean, his downfield ability, his ability to stretch the field, take the top off of a defense. I mean, Darius Slayton has been a great deep target for the Giants for the last couple of seasons, but having the 2 of them together in an offense, if you could also add just potentially, that number 1 alpha receiver.
And this is a deeper receiver class than last year's.
Yeah, because as you said, Hyatt showed flashes of greatness this past season. However, with his size, he's not going to be, unless he bulks up significantly, that number 1 X receiver that's going to make, multiple 5-6 contested catches every game. That's probably not his exact skill set. Of course, he could develop and grow into that. But as of right now,
he's
with
still a baby.
his on the smaller side of, body frames for wideouts, maybe that's not what he grows into. But yeah, I mean, Jalen Hyatt, I feel like, is going to be a a big part of the Giants offense this upcoming season and in future years. And Wan'Dale Robinson, the second half of the season, finally seemed like he was over the torn ACL from 2022 and started showing that explosiveness that we saw at Kentucky, why the Giants took him in the second round of the 2022 draft. He really looked like he was fully over that injury. And between Wan'Dale, Hyatt, and Slayton, who will be back this season, that's the beginnings of a very strong wide receiver class. If you could add one more, number one alpha dog to that group, there's no limit to what that group could accomplish.
201-939-4513. Cliff in New Haven is on line 2 on BBKL. Hello.
Hey, it's Cliff from New York, man.
Oh, it says, hey, Pearson. My
bad, Cliff.
Our all-pro producer has Cliff from New Haven on the screen. Okay.
Well, when you're going to be in a show, you start in New Haven. That's all right. Anyway, listen, great stuff, guys. I'm rooting for Joe Shane to get an offer from the people behind him to trade up for the tight end that Parcells would say, let's not put him in the Hall of Fame just yet. And the guy that is willing to learn to block. I'm hoping somebody's dazzled by his Hall of Fame credentials and gives Joe a great offer, because in spite of all the progress that's been made from the desert that Gettleman took over from both Gettleman and Shane, I'm afraid we're still suffering from that 2018 state of affairs where none of our draft picks were re-signed by us or were found on anybody else's roster. We're still recovering from that, I think. And I'm looking at the Cowboys with 3 All-Pros on the offensive line. 2, only 1 is a tackle, by the way. And the Eagles, and I think, are still formidable regardless of what happens with Kelsey. And I'm hoping that somehow the 3 technique can take on a higher priority, because when it comes to complementary football, isn't there something special that happens to the whole team when we get some pressure up the middle, man? And I don't know if there's anybody that qualifies, but I was glad Schmelk mentioned Fisk from Florida State. I watch very little college football, but I saw him on TV against Louisville, and I said, I want that guy, but I have no clue. I have no clue what boxes he checks and doesn't check to play for this organization and in the New York market.
Cliff, before you get to your next point, do you have any idea, and this is very early, so I will not hold you to it, because God knows I haven't decided where I'd want to go either. How far down would you like to go from 6? Where's your comfort zone?
I would leave the first round, man, because there's so much talent.
Whoa, you're going out of the first round.
I would, because don't you get a little extra financial benefit from doing that too?
Yeah, but at least if you keep a first-round pick, you've always got that fifth-year option for that player if he turns out to be a superstar.
The other end of it.
And you will save money by going down, because every slot has an appropriate amount of money, delving out to him. So if you go down to 12 or you go down to 15, you are, in effect, saving money.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I think with Joe Shane showing what he could do with very little money that first year, which was incredible what he did that first year, he knows how to use very little money, so I would lean on that. The other thing is the most important improvement might have been made already with the hiring of Aaron Wellman. If we take this present roster and it's healthy, I'm back as a wild card contender right away. Unfortunately, that's in the way we are in the division and in the conference. That's still a long ways from being a contender, really.
Yeah.
Without some major improvement in both lines.
I hear you. Thank you, Cliff. 201-939-4513. We go to Bob in Myrtle Beach. You're on line 3 on BBKL. Hello.
Hey, good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you very much for taking
Thank you for
call.
calling.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, so I was listening to the beginning of the show, and I had to call in, just hearing what you guys were saying. And Paul, I totally agree with you. I'm a big Bo Nix fan. I think that this kid is going to develop into a very solid NFL quarterback. Now, my question is, and this kind of frustrates me, I'm not going to lie, is there seems to be a narrative out there that if the Giants were to draft Bo Nix and pick 6, that it would be like a massive reach and a very bad thing. Like, no one's saying that, and I'm trying to figure out why. I mean, you got to kind of put things in perspective, not to pick on Daniel Jones, but, a lot of people had him rated out as like a third-round draft pick. I mean, I remember seeing people on social media, a dude threw his TV off the top of his house. He was so upset the Giants drafted Daniel Jones. I don't think that's going to happen with Bo Nix. I think a lot of Giants fans want him, and I just, I'm trying to wrap my head around, why is it such a bad thing to take him at 6? Why do we have to trade back to get him, risk not getting him? I just think, help me out here.
Well, I'll tell you what. I've always believed if you're all in on a guy, it doesn't matter what everybody else says. If you're all in on a guy and you've done your research and you totally believe that when you are up to pick, he's the guy who you've got to have, then you've got to take him. And that's why the Giants took Daniel Jones at 6, Matt, because they were all in on him. And they also had, as I have also come to learn, there were 3 other teams that were going to take Daniel Jones if the Giants passed on him at 6 and waited to grab him at 17. He would not have been there.
Yeah, that, reports of him having a 3rd-round grade, I don't believe that to be true.
Not
in
at
the
all.
Slightest.
Not
There's
at all.
no way he, as Paul just said, there's no way he would have even dropped another 11 picks, let alone another couple rounds. He was widely regarded as a high to mid first-round pick, which is where he ended up going.
Now, here's the problem. When you talk about 6, now, follow me with this, Matt. Maybe this is just a figment of people's imaginations, but they think the top 3 picks could be QBs, right?
Yep.
Okay. We know that the 2 receivers, Harrison, Odunze, and probably Neighbors, make it 3 receivers, are probably also going to be top 10.
Yes.
So that's 6, right?
Yep.
Alt is probably a top 10. That's 7. Bowers, the tight end.
Yep.
Okay, that's 8. I mean, do you wanna go another person or 2?
A lot of people have Fasciano in that group
Yeah.
as well.
I mean, he's probably sketchy at 9. Is there a 10? You think there's a 10? I'm looking at the list. I don't know that there's a for sure 10.
For sure 10? No. I believe
There's probably a for sure 8 out of 10, though, right?
The offensive tackle, I forgot his name, from Oregon State that John mentioned before, who's down at the Senior Bowl.
Fuanga.
Yes. He, I feel like, could easily end up finding his way up to 10,
See, I think
especially with a strong week this week.
I think if Latu does really, really, really well coming up in the next couple of months, he might sneak up there too. But I think there's probably 8 for sure that are going to be top 10, and then you could probably argue about the last 2.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas Turner, a lot of people believe, could sneak into the top 10 as well. So, yeah, those 8 guys that you mentioned, all on the offensive side of the ball, I would be shocked if any of them, barring something crazy happening over the next 2.5 months, if any of them dropped out of the top 10.
Okay, so Bob, right there, when you hear that, okay, you understand now why somebody might say to you, how can you pick Knicks at 6? Because there are 8 bona fide, probably unanimous players who are considered blue chips higher than him. Now, if you believe in taking the best player available, which many teams do, then you'd have a hard time taking Knicks at 6. That's all. And so no one's besmirching him or disrespecting him. I suspect he will go lower than 6. I suspect he will. How much lower? I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if he's in the top 12, to be frank with you, because people need quarterbacks. And I think he's going to be really good. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. I guess, final thing before I go out there, I'm just saying, you're talking about 6 to 12 and stuff. I mean, like you just said, Paul, though, if you believe in the guy and you think he could be the franchise quarterback going forward, I think you got to take him, man.
It only takes one team, right? It only takes one team to have an all-in belief on a player, and they're taking him. And they won't care what number it is. And if they happen to be before you, well, then guess what? They got him. It's that simple.
Well, I hope Joe Shane loves the man. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate the call, Bob.
I also just want to point out, we're having all this draft talk. It's January 31st. As we see every single year in the pre-draft process, during the combine, during pro days, there are quarterbacks that rise up. Quarterback is the most important position on the football field. No one's going to argue that. Every single year we see guys that around this time are not projected to be top of the first round picks that end up finding themselves landing in the top 10 come the end of April. So while right now people are saying guys like Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix a lot of people are saying, like they should not be top 10 picks. By the time the draft starts, there could be very, very different evaluations out there.
Absolutely.
So just something to keep in mind.
And there are also things that will come out in the personnel folders of these players.
Yep.
Remember Tunsil on draft night? The video didn't do him any favors.
No, and look at him now, an all-pro left tackle.
Yeah, right. We reversed the special teams coaches, by the way. Adams is at the Senior Bowl, and the lead special teams coordinator is at the Shrine Game. We reversed them before. I wanted to just fix that for everybody. 201-939-4513. We've got about 5 minutes left. Lines are open. If somebody wants to try to get in, we'll be very glad to get you in real quick before today's show is over. Now, one thing that Joe Schoen did talk about, or two things that we did not talk with John about. A, he said he'll meet with Saquon Barkley's representatives at the Combine, which is the end of February. And B, he also said that there's probably a really good chance that they'll have a defensive coordinator in place by the end of the week.
Yes.
Thoughts?
Well, about Saquon, I feel like that's been touched on at length already.
I think they'll get a deal done. I really do.
I hope so. I mean, we've seen what Saquon means and what he does to an offense, how defenses have to prepare for him. I mean, there's no question he's one of the best running backs in the NFL when he's healthy. But, as Joe mentioned, they're going to talk with his reps at the Combine, which isn't for, almost another month.
They're busy. They've got stuff to do.
Which that's just why I think the second point is a little more important for right now, which is, filling the most important position left to fill on the coaching staff at defensive coordinator. As we've been on air, I just want to note that there are reports that the Seattle Seahawks have hired Mike McDonald, the Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator, as their head coach. That was the last head coach opening remaining.
Right.
So what that does, that could have a ripple effect between some of the other candidates that have been interviewing with the Giants and other teams around the NFL for open defensive coordinator positions, because now the Ravens are going to have to fill their own, and there's a decent chance that they could just promote someone internally.
For example, Denard Wilson had reportedly had discussions with the Giants, but now his status could really be flipped up in the air.
Yeah, and I believe it's Anthony Weaver, also the assistant head coach, defensive line coach, I want to say, for the Ravens, who had gotten some interest to be other teams' defensive coordinators. Between those two, those would be the most logical candidates to just be promoted internally to the Ravens defensive coordinator position. But again, that could have an effect on the Giants' plans if those reports were true and the Giants did want to bring Wilson into the fold.
Final thought, Joe Schoen also said when he was asked about the D.C. spot that he didn't really have a preference as to a 3-4 or 4-3 base scheme coordinator, because he believes that the Giants have enough flexibility on their roster to deal with either. And I have presented that for the last few weeks as a significant question that they have to answer. What style of scheme are you looking for? Joe's leaving that door open, that it could be either style, either type of scheme. And, great. I mean, that means the palette, if you will, is wider than if you just want a certain guy who goes with a certain scheme.
Yeah, for sure. And the one thing that I at least have thought about when it comes to what you just said, 3-4 versus 4-3, is the last two seasons the Giants have played primarily in the 3-4 base.
With the stand-up defensive end being Thibodeau.
Yeah, and in the last two seasons, we've seen Dexter Lawrence primarily line up at nose tackle and develop into one of, honestly, if not the best interior defensive lineman in the NFL.
Which is why I kind of raised the question, because you'd think that maybe they want to stay that way, but maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, as Joe said, they seem open to either. I think they're going to go with just the best candidate, period.
Yep.
And with everything else with this coaching staff, everything is a collaborative process. So I'm sure whoever the defensive coordinator is will be brought in, have discussions with Brian Dable, with, maybe even Joe Shane, the front office, and they'll figure out the best way to get the best out of all of the Giants players, which is a common theme that we've seen of the last 2 years since Joe Shane and Brian Dable took over.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. As always, it's presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants. You can catch the archive of this show on Giants podcast platforms everywhere and at giants.com/podcasts. For Matt Sitek, I got it right.
Yes.
I'm Paul Dottino. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Introducing the Lisa Chill Collection, your answer to hot nights. These mattresses beat the heat with ultra-cool covers, whisking away heat for the perfect sleep temperature. Save up to $460 on Chill mattresses and get 2 free pillows when you shop now. iHeart listeners can save an extra $50 off by visiting lisa.com/iHeart. That's LEESA.com/iHeart. Exclusions apply. See lisa.com for more details.
Looking for a better solution to keep your firearms in high-performance condition? Visit RiptideArmory.com for the most advanced proprietary gun cleaning formula on the market. Right now, get up to $40 off any cleaning kit for a limited time on RiptideArmory.com and take advantage of this amazing deal today. Riptide's 2-step cleaning kit offers state-of-the-art technology and guaranteed satisfaction. Riptide Armory is a veteran-founded business, and you can trust that all chemicals are American-made and quality tested. Shop RiptideArmory.com.